All right, welcome to today's Infinity Training class. We have a group of eager participants that have joined us live, and hopefully people will catch this recorded. My name is Deane, and the reason that I'm here is because I was Mike Chenault's college buddy, and that propelled me into being a real estate guy. So today we're going to talk about listing. That's sort of the theme we had for the last couple Infinity trainings. And the whole goal of this is to give you some ideas of some things that can give you more powerful presentation skills, a better mindset, some tools to go into your tool belt as you go and talk to people about selling their homes, and maybe come out of this thing with a little bit more confidence, so you'll be more likely to go after some listings. Look, we lost somebody. Here we go, admit. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these points. I said I came up with 10 points, but actually it's 10 and a half. So the first one I said is you got to take control. One of the things that I think new agents especially mess up on is when they go to the listing appointment, they let the seller is totally in control of the appointment. So Caitlin, who just joined, I'll repeat point number 1/2 is you got to take control. And what that means, there's a lot of ways you can take control. You don't want to be a jerk and like totally, roll over them, but you need to sort of lay the groundwork for how it's going to go. You might want to say, hey, once you go through the initial discussion, and we used to shake hands, now I guess that's not cool anymore. But once you go through the initial mumbo jumbo of being at the front door and talking to them, then I think it's not a bad idea. So a couple things could happen tonight. One, we could list your home. I could choose to list your home and we could sell it. Everything's great. Number two, I guess that, we couldn't come to terms, and, you might not want to list your home with me. And then number three, I could choose not to list your home. And really any one of those things is fine. So there are a couple things, that's right out of the Mike Ferry script, that enable you to take control from the get-go. Another way to take control is where you sit. So a lot of times people will say, hey, why don't we sit in the family room? And so everybody's sitting in the sofa and sitting on a chair. That just doesn't work. You can't do business like that. You can't show them your presentation materials. I like to sit at the head of the table when I'm doing a presentation. If it's a kitchen table, I want to sit at the head of the table. I have a friend who he stands up for every single appointment. Nikki, I think that's you. If you can mute yourself.
3 weeks ago, then I could have.
Let me go ahead and mute Nikki here. Participants, where somebody. There we go. Now we're muted. Perfect. Thank you. So, I have a friend who likes to stand up during the presentation. So he'll have the people sitting at the table and he'll stand up. Sometimes that can be a little more intimidating, especially like if you're a really big guy, like if you're Jake Croco and you stand up at the table, that could be a little bit intimidating. But, for certain people that might be good. But I like to sit at the head of the table. I never sit in the living room or the family room, never sit on soft furniture. When I've ever done that, it's just been a disaster. If there are distractions, like if the TV is on, ask them to turn it off. If there's, sometimes there's distractions that you can't control, like babies crying or whatever else, those you just sort of have to deal with. But if there's things that you can deal with, like especially when it comes to the TV being on or something like that, then I think you want to just politely ask that they turn that off. So take control. Set the groundwork, maybe have some kind of dialogue up front that's going to set the tone for what's going to happen. Tonight, we're going to sit down, we're going to go through the comparables, we're going to go through my presentation, and you'll have a choice. You'll have a choice to list with me or to not list with me, something like that. All right. Number one, that was point 1/2. That was the bonus point. To be a powerful lister, you got to think of yourself as a presenter. Okay. Some of you have heard me say this before, but a really cool guy that I got some exposure with when I was coaching for Mike Ferry was a guy named Ron Arden. And Ron Arden is a speech coach. He works with political figures. He works with movie stars. He works with people that are going to be of other people. And we got about a half a day session with him, the Mike Ferry coaches and I did. And one of the things he said, when you're giving a listing presentation, you have to think of yourself not as just a salesperson, not as just a real estate agent. You got to think of yourself as a presenter, and you got to think of yourself as when it comes time to present, you're like a Broadway actor. It is showtime. Okay, write that down, showtime. So, and think of that, like when you're an actor or an actress, when the curtain opens and the lights come on, then you've got to have it. I mean, you've got to be juiced up. Like, or if you want to use a sports analogy, you know, when you're running out of that tunnel and they got the smoke and the laser beams and the fire and all that stuff, you got to be on your freaking game. And that's what we got to have too. So the idea of being a presenter and of it being showtime, that's a couple steps higher than just being a salesperson. And then with that is you've got to have high energy. You've got to be positive. You've got to be magnetic. You've got to be professional. But remember this, you've got to also be listening. Because if you're so juiced up, you just steamroll the people, that probably doesn't work. You need to be willing to listen and hear their concerns, hear their questions, be empathetic to where you can really help them. Maybe you're here for them. They're not there for you. So don't take that egotistical approach that, well, I'm giving my presentation. You guys just sit back and I'm going to just do my thing. It's not that at all. You got to be juiced. You got to be pumped. You got to have a great presentation. You need to listen to them and cater it to them so that they think that you, and they believe justly that you really care and that you're trying to help them. Hopefully that makes sense to you. All right. The next thing I wrote down is this thing has got to be some kind of routine. Like you have to be fairly consistent in what you're doing when you're doing listing presentations. A lot of people hate the word script. They don't like to say, I'm going to have a scripted or canned presentation. That gives negative connotations to people. And okay. But you can't just wing it. If you just go in, especially if you're new and you're just winging it, it ain't going to work. You're going to forget things. You're not going to look very professional. And the folks are not going to want to, they're not going to have the confidence to list their home with you if you're just winging it. So what I like to use is the word, have a routine. So what I like to do when I get to a listing, my sort of routine, which yours doesn't have to be this, but my routine is I like to have gone through a pretty good pre-qualification script so I know who I'm dealing with. I like to know what kind of personalities I'm dealing with so that I can cater my personality to them. I try to be versatile. And so I'm going to try to, if there's someone who's analytical in this, usually a couple, you know, I need to be a little bit more analytical because that's not me by nature. If they're a driver personality, then I'm going to try not to tell as many stories and I'm going to try not to be as long-winded. I'm going to try to stick to the point. Drivers like, you know, they like bullet points. Here are the points and here's how we can do it, and then shut up. So I'd like to pre-qualify, I like to know what their concerns are, what their questions might be. And then I'm going to cater my presentation to them. So I'll go in, once I've pre-qualified, I'll meet them. I'll take a tour of the house. I'll invite them to sit down at the kitchen table or the dining room table, and I'll sit at the head. I'll go through sort of some statements that are going to set the tone, like, you know, hey, I really appreciate you having me over. Looking forward to you listing your home with me, and I hope that's the outcome of our meeting. It might be that we just can't come together, and it doesn't happen. We'll see. I like to let people know that I'm not afraid to walk away. I don't want them to think that I'm desperate and that I have to have the listing. I want to let them know that we're going to do this. And if it works out and you know, we're comfortable with one another and I'm comfortable with you and the home and the pricing and all that, then we'll move forward. You don't want to come off looking like a cocky asshole on this, but you definitely need to let them know that there needs to be some feeling that you're not desperate. And I think most real estate agents are desperate. So the next thing I do is go through, usually I talk about the market conditions. How many homes have gone under contract in the last 7 days? How many homes have come on the market in the last 7 days? Do you know those numbers? Actually, in the last 7 days, there's been 550 plus or minus a few that have come on the market. And there's about 300, there's 300 that have come on the market and 550 have gone under contract. So the more market knowledge you present them with, the more they think of you as a professional. Most people want to list with a professional, not an idiot. So that's a good thing. So we go through the market, the general information about the market, start out big, hone it down into their neighborhood, go through the market analysis, come to some kind of agreement on pricing. And then I talk a little bit about what we do to get homes sold. I talk about photography. I talk about staging. I talk about the different kinds of marketing that we do. Then I try to close. I'm not a hard closer, but I like to, my close is usually, so if, does what I say make sense? And they'll say yes. I try to get a pattern of yes. I'll ask questions. If what I said makes sense, then do you feel, are we comfortable with the price of $350,000? And if they say yeah, some say, well, let's do the right thing. Let's go ahead and get this home on the market so we can get you to Florida in the time that you need to be there, something like that. And then listen to what they have to say. Then a lot of times when I'm trying to close, that's when they come up with some objections. And so they're gonna ask questions and give you some objections, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that's sort of the routine. So step one was to sort of take control. Step 1/2 was to take control. Step 2 is to be a great presenter, and it's showtime when you get there. Step 3 is to make sure you have some kind of a routine, which you rehearse. Again, just as if you're a Broadway actor, you have to rehearse. Have you ever seen a movie when they like have a cameo from somebody who's not an actor or an actress? You ever see that? And they stick out like a sore thumb. Like they you would think it isn't that big a deal, but if, like I remember, I don't know why this came about, something about Mary. Anybody seen that? And Brett Favre, they call him Brett Favre, shows up. I mean, the guy's a great quarterback, but he sucks as an actor, right? I mean, they just stick out like a sore thumb. Well, you don't want to do that either. You need to rehearse this stuff so they realize that you've internalized it and you're not just trying to remember it. So the more natural you are as acting like a salesperson, the better you're going to be received by the client. Hopefully you understand what I'm talking about there. The next one I wrote down is use persuasive and assumptive language. So statements like this: when you list your home with me, as opposed to if you list your home with me. When you list. After you sign the contract, you might say, well, once we're working together and after you sign the contract, then here's what I'm going to do. When you're talking about the action plan, make it assumptive, not like you're begging for it. Just make it sound like, hey, we do this all the time. I have some other assumptive language that you use during the listing presentation. These would be great things to write down. I'll repeat the first couple. When you list with me, after you sign the contract, now that you have chosen me, when I sell your home. That's a great one, because most people, unless they're lunatics, they list their home because they want to sell it. Now, I have worked with people that I felt like they didn't want to sell their home and they listed it, but most people want to sell it. So when I sell your home, that assumes that you're going to take them to the promised land. When you're talking about communication, each week when we talk, when I bring you an offer, those are things that's just some examples of assumptive language. Everybody sort of understand what? Go ahead and nod your heads if you sort of get that. So if you use assumptive and persuasive language, I think people, again, that just makes them feel like they can follow you, that you're already on board and you're moving forward, and they like that confidence. And remember, though, there's a fine line between confidence and cockiness that you don't want to cross. Okay. One line that I wrote up that I like to use, especially if they start talking about commission and stuff like that, I like to use the line like, and this isn't really, this isn't assumptive. It's more persuasive and confident is, you know what, I'm the guard dog for the equity in your home. And do you want to hire, this is really an objection handling thing, which we're going to talk about in a second, but do you want to hire somebody that will sit here in front of you and give away their hard-earned income? What happens when that same person that caves to you is trying to negotiate with me? Do you want them to just give away your money? If they're willing to give away theirs, they're certainly going to give away yours. I'm the guard dog for your equity. I don't know, I thought that was pretty good. You guys might think that sucks, but I like it. It's worked a lot. All right, next. I think it's number 5, really. So prepare before you go. All right, prepare before you go, especially the market analysis. I see a lot of agents that pull comps, but they don't really understand the comps. When you are sitting in front of a seller, you need to be able to explain the comps. They know their house very well. So you need to try to get to know their house as well as you can. You can do that a combination of 2 ways. When you're talking to them in pre-qualifying, you want to get to know their house. And then when you're there, you want to make sure that you see it and absorb it and know it. And then you need to really have studied the comparable sales and the comparable actives and the comparable pendings even, and know how they actually compare to the subject property. People will sniff out a phony all the time. If you don't know the area, like if they say, well, where is 101 Elm Street? And you're like, well, hell, I don't know. Then they're like, that's not going to help them. You need to be able to know where the comparables are related to their home. You need to know how they actually compare to that. So all that is preparation. And I would tell you this, if I were one of you guys, especially the newer ones, if I had a listing appointment, I would get somebody else in the company, or certainly your spouse or somebody, just anybody, and I would role play that listing appointment. Okay. How do you do that? You once you've pre-qualified them, try to anticipate some of the objections they're going to give you. Try to anticipate some of the questions they're going to give you, and then, like, if I'm gonna role play with Letitia, which would be fun, then Letitia would be the seller, and I would tell her, okay, you're selling 101 Elm Street, you're moving to Florida, it's a job transfer, you're interviewing 2 other agents. One of them has already told you they're going to do it for 5%. And the biggest concern would, you had a realtor last time that didn't communicate very well with you. Okay. So I'm going to tell Letitia all those things, and then she can assume that role and pretend to be that person. And we'll go through the listing presentation. And more than likely, a lot of that same dialogue and conversation will come up in reality. Wouldn't you say? Letitia, doesn't that make sense? So if we've gone through it before, then I have a little bit more confidence when we actually do it. And she might say something, I'll be like, wow, I never thought about that. Well, I'd rather that happen between Letitia and me for free than if I'm doing it at the real seller's house and I got $15,000 on the line. You understand? And back to the whole idea of presentation. Ron Arden, when we met with him, he was like, think of your listing presentation like this. Let's say you're going to list a $300,000 house. That's a $9,000 gross commission. If somebody was going to pay you $9,000 to give a presentation or a speech, would you just wing it? To come to speak to Hometown Realty? Are you just going to show up and be like, hey man, what do y'all want to talk about today? Pretty cool room. Pretty cool Hometown Realty masks y'all are all wearing. That's not what we want to hear. We want to be inspired. We want to be moved. And that's the thing. The seller is expecting you to have your shit together. Don't tell Mike I cussed on the class, but expecting you to have your act together. And not that he never cusses in classes. But anyway, that's between Mike and I. Anyway, you need to have your act together. You need to be ready, and you need to impress these people. That you want to leave, and then you'd be like, wow, Brian was on it, man. That other loser that came 2 days ago sucked compared to Brian. He was dressed nicely. He was professional. He got to the point. He did what all that stuff. That's what you want to have. So the more preparation you do in advance, the better. So role play is great. Again, pre-qualifying is important so that you can make that have that preparation. And then certainly having the damn market analysis and really having that internalized is a good situation. All right, next one. And if you have a question, you can interrupt or whatever, but if you don't, no big deal. The next one is, and this is something that I make mistake even today. I make this mistake a lot. And the mistake I make is not deciding the price or not deciding the commission in advance. Okay, so if you're not sure of the price when you go to the listing, so a listing presentation is a lot like the seller is trying to sell you on how high the price should be on their house, right? Wouldn't you say that? You guys that have some experience, like Deane, you've been in it, and I guess Letitia, you got some experience. If you've been on these things, the seller is like, well, look at these gold-plated toilet seats. I mean, wow, this is Laura Ashley paint right here. This is not just regular gray paint. Laura Ashley, yeah. And they're to try to get the money up. And if you're not careful, you can buy into that, right? I mean, you don't want to hurt their feelings or whatever. So you might have had a gut feeling that the house is worth $250, and now they got you. You're thinking $299 by the time you walk out of there. Now, again, you might see some things that really make a difference. Like you might not have known they had a screen porch. Well, that's important. But Laura Ashley paint and gold-plated toilet seats are not that important. So have that in mind. The other thing is, you know what? You don't want to be a commission cutter. We're not a discount company. And, the more confident you are knowing your value and the value you bring to the client, and that your 6% commission is solid is important. We'll talk about objections here in a couple points, but so know the price before you get there. And it's okay to adjust it based on real stuff, like tangible things, but not just because you feel sorry for the seller. Couple things that never impact the price. And I'm just doing, this was not in my notes, but I'm doing this off the top of my head. What the seller needs to clear, does that impact the price of the property? Now, what the seller owes, it's important to the seller. I'll give it that for sure. But who ultimately determines the price? The buyer or the seller? Buyer. Or let's not use the word price. Let's determine value. Who ultimately determines the value of a property?
The buyer.
The buyer. The buyer. Now, I don't have to sell it for what the value, the market value is. I cannot sell. But I can't, as a seller, I can't really determine the value. It's up to the buyers to do that. So what I owe doesn't matter. What about what the other agent told them? Does that matter? What if they have an appraisal from last year when they refinanced the home? Does that matter? No. What if they have some debts that they want to pay off before they want to pay off their car and their school loans before they move? Does that impact the value of the house? Do you think sellers sometimes think that those things are important with the value? All the time. So be prepared for that. Okay. The next one I wrote is sort of a duplicate of what this is a double point, but I wrote practice before you go. Practice before you go. Most agents never practice their listing presentation, and I'm telling you, the listing presentation is your most valuable tool in your toolbox. If you got a damn good listing presentation, you're going to make a lot of money in this business. Okay. If your listing presentation stinks, you're going to spend a lot of time going on listings and not getting them, which doesn't make any sense. If you're going to go, why not get the listing, right? I mean, I would rather not go to your house at 6:30 at night and sit there and walk through your smelly house and, kiss your ass if I know I'm not going to get the listing. I mean, I'd rather just stay home. Okay. I mean, no hard feelings, but I'm there for a reason. I'm assuming that they want to possibly list with me, and I sure as hell want them to list with me. So I'm going to try to get it going. So if you practice before you go, you're definitely getting yourself in a better setup than before. All right, next point. Be enthusiastic when you get there. Let me see how I can begin to explain this. I really like working in an environment at Hometown Realty because I do think we have people that have some energy. Okay. And even here, a lot of times people don't seem to be that energized and enthusiastic. I mean, you guys have this incredible opportunity. Like Mike told me when I told you that the reason I'm here is because I was Mike's college buddy. All right. When Mike was trying to sell me on getting in the real estate business, he's like, look, man, he goes, how long have we known each other? I'm like, I don't know, 10 years. He's like, are either of us the smartest people? Like, have we ever been the smartest guy in the room? I'm like, no. What if we went to law school? I'd fail out. How about med school? Certainly fail out. Couldn't get in. So, what skills do you have? I said, well, I can talk to people. I can, people usually sort of like me a little bit, and I'm pretty enthusiastic. He's like, that's what it takes. That and honesty and integrity and doing the right thing. That is really the foundation of being a great real estate agent. You have to have some brains, but you don't have to be, it's not rocket science, right? It's not rocket science. Have to be a problem solver. There's other things we can talk about. However, one thing that you can control is how enthusiastic you are. When you go in the door, again, you can overdo this. I have rarely seen any of you overdo it. Okay, you can sure as hell underdo it. In a market, even when a market is good like this, people want to hire a real estate agent that is excited about the possibility of selling their home versus like, well, I don't really give a shit if it sells or not. I mean, if that's the attitude that you come across with, then they're going to the next gal or the next guy. You get it? So you need to have energy because energy is attractive. If you need to listen to some cool music on the way over to the appointment, then do that. Whatever you do, don't listen to the news. I don't even like to be on my phone because returning calls on the way to listing appointment, what kind of calls do you usually get as a real estate agent during the day? If you're doing any business, they're usually not good. They're either neutral or bad. Like, termite problems, loon problem. I don't want to have that in my head when I walk in to sit in front of the seller. I want to have like AC/DC. I want to have like my, like I sucked at baseball, but if I were a baseball player, I would have like AC/DC would be my walk-up music. And then if I was in a slump, I would change it. And then Earth, Wind, and Fire would be my walk-up music, right? Can you listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire? If any of you know what Earth, Wind, and Fire is, can you listen to that and not get moving and not get excited? I can't. Okay. So for me, that's my juice. I don't do drugs. I like Earth, Wind, and Fire. I like AC/DC. I like music. I like reading inspirational books. I do watch some TV, but I try to never watch or listen to the news. So if things bring you down, stay away from them. Do the things that bring you up so that you can have that energy, because energy is contagious. And sales, one time Mike Ferry told me, he said, sales is basically just a transference of energy. Okay. And energy is attractive. So there you go. There's my thing about enthusiasm and energy. Because even if you don't know what the hell you're doing, if you smile and nod a lot and you're excited, that's attractive. So anyway, my next point was create energy and intensity. So you can see how excited I am about energy and enthusiasm. I made it 2 points in a row. So I'm sorry that you're going to get gypped and you're really only going to get 10 points and not the actual bonus point. Number 9, we've alluded to this one before. This is practice the objection handlers. Why is that important? I'll tell you. Because if you suck at handling objections, you're not going to prospect. Because if you get your teeth kicked in every time you go on an appointment because people give you objections and you don't know what to do with it, why would you want to continue to go on appointments? Understand this. So if I don't know how to handle objections, subconsciously, I'm going to stop trying to get appointments because I don't want to get beat up. Like if every time I walked into Jake's office, Jake smashed me in the face with the right hook and I get knocked out, then I'm not going to keep going into his office. You get it? Every time I go on a listing appointment, if somebody says, well, will you cut your commission? I'm like, oh, we want you to, pitch a tent, live in the front yard. Oh God. We want to talk to other agents. Oh God. We want, we want you to light yourself on fire and ride up and down the street on a unicycle. Oh, okay. If that happens to you and you just can't deal with that, then eventually you're going to just stop dealing with it. And then you're going to sit in the office and cry and mope around. Then I got to deal with that. So we don't want that. We want you to make a lot of money and be happy. But the way to do it is become a powerful objection handler. I know that if you go on to Hometown University, yesterday I met with a group of 22 agents. I'm like, how many of you ever heard of Hometown University? And only like 10 people raised their hands. That is a resource that's on YouTube. It's our YouTube channel. And there's a lot of classes and information there. One of those things you can go to is the handling objections section that I've done. And we'll do that again live, hopefully soon, because it's a much better class live than it is Zoom. So we'll work on that. But practice the objection. So if for instance, if Deane is going on an appointment and they said like something about commission like 5 times when she's pre-qualifying them, guess what one of the objections is going to be? We want you to cut your commission. So if you haven't even thought about that, and you just like, oh, well, I really work hard for my commission, that ain't going to cut it. You got to have a good one. Do you want to hear a good one for that? I've already given you one good one. I'll give you another one. So who is Jake? Unmute yourself. We're going to role play.
Can't wait.
Since Jake wanted to hit me in the face when I walked in his office. So go ahead and tell me that, we want you to cut your commission.
Deane, you're a nice guy, but I really think we're going to have to cut that commission. It just seems a little steep.
Seems a little steep. Tell me a little bit about so tell me, are you against commission, or you just think it's high? What's going on with the commission?
No, I'm not against commission. I just don't want to lose that much money when I haven't owned the house long enough to get much equity out of it.
Right. Yeah, and I think you're just like everybody that I talk to. I mean, no one wants to lose any money, right? I mean, nobody wants to just give their money away, right?
Very true.
And you know what's funny, Jake, is that sometimes cutting commission actually costs you more money versus paying the commission can actually make you more money. Did you know that?
I did not.
Can I explain?
Absolutely.
So, Jake, how many homes do you think the average real estate agent in Richmond sells in a year?
Well, they all drive nice cars, so it must be a lot.
Yeah, you would think that, right? Yet in reality, it's between 2 and 3 deals a year. What do you do for a living, Jake?
I'm a realtor.
No, you're not, because you wouldn't be calling me.
I work in the movie
So
industry.
you're a male model?
Yes, plus size.
A hand model. So Jake, in your world, if you only got 2 jobs a year or 3 jobs a year, can you make a living off that?
No.
So one of the reasons that agents are willing to cut their commission is that they're desperate. And if somebody's desperate, are they looking after your best interest?
You froze on me, but I'm looking after my best interest.
If you're desperate, you're going to be looking after your own best interest. Is that the kind of agent that you want?
No.
And I'll tell you this too. If you were selling 2 to 3 houses a year and you looked in the MLS and one was offering a discount commission, right? Like 2.5% or something like that. And all the other ones were offering 3%. Which ones would you encourage your buyers to look at?
I'd be looking at 3% so I can make more money.
Because you have to, right? I mean, if you're only doing 2, that's a big deal. So do you want to get more exposure for your house, or do you want to get less?
More.
Yeah, you want to get more, because more exposure means what for you?
More people coming through the doors and a higher price, hopefully.
And eventually a higher price. So let's do the right thing. Let's put the commission aside and realize, let's net the most money on the sale, even if that means paying 6%. Let's net the most money so you can walk away with more money to take and roll into your new home. Doesn't that sound like a good idea?
Sounds great.
Okay, does that sound like a pretty deep, does that work every time?
No.
There's no magic objection handling script that works every time. I do know what doesn't work. So ask me to cut the commission, Jake.
You're really gonna have to cut that commission. I just can't do it without that.
Okay. How did that work?
It's easy. It's great.
Yeah. Okay. So again, without going through the whole objection handling class, did I tell Jake about the whole commission thing? Did I tell him that? Yes or no? No.
Go ahead.
What
I
did
thought you explained it well.
Did I explain it? Oh, okay. How did I explain it? Did I make lots of statements?
Your first role play, you mean?
The actual role play that we did about the two scenarios of the agent that the average agent only sells 2 houses.
You were questioning on the client of which one to go with. So you're pretty much asking them the question to dictate what answer they should give you.
Yeah, you flipped it on them.
I asked the question. So when you're in a conversation and you ask the questions, are you in control of the conversation?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. And so by asking a series of questions, was I able to lead Jake to where I really wanted him to go?
Yes.
Yeah, you were in
Yes.
control because a lot of your questions were yes, required a yes response, so you could get him in the direction you want him to go.
Correct, Letitia. I was building a pattern of yeses, and
Right.
additionally having to do some thinking, and it was like sort of like the Jedi mind trick. Like his thing was commission is bad, and I sort of turned it around like paying full commission is now good. He's going to net more money by paying the full commission versus going with the discount route. So the bottom line is you want to, did it sound like I tried to make him feel wrong?
Mm-mm.
You don't want to do that. I wanted to be empathetic. I understand no one wants to lose money in today's world. I certainly don't. And none of, I think I use the phrase like, you're just like all the other clients that we work with. So it makes him feel like, you know what, I'm not the only person that's ever had these feelings. And yet I also assumed that, or was hoping that he would assume that I've been able to work through this before. Okay.
Mhm.
So if you haven't ever seen the objection handling class that we do, check out the YouTube channel. We'll see about that, but make sure when you see it come across again, that we do that. And maybe we can do that next week. I don't know if we can do it live or not. I have to ask Mike, but I'd like, yep.
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. One thing I appreciate about your listing presentation as a therapist is the visual subtlety of it. You sit at the head of the table, you're leading the yes question line, things like that. Did anybody else see the Tom Ferry video where the lady is handling objections, similar manner, but she has the visual of her marketing presentation is laminated sheets of paper, and when someone is questioning the commission, she starts picking up the pieces of paper to add as a visual of things she's taking away as it's another good visual and like a subtle, like subconscious psychological trigger, not trigger, but
It's like an icon. It's
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and there's what I learned from Mike Ferry about, and it's funny, when I learned all this stuff, Tom Ferry was working for Mike Ferry just like I was. So like I sat here and Tom Ferry sometimes sat right here, and I would joke around. It's funny, now he's like an international superstar. But at one point I sort of knew the dude and hung out a little bit. But anyway, what Mike and Tom would tell you is just having one objection handler for the easy objections, meaning the ones that come up most frequently, like cutting the commission. I mean, that's just going to come up a lot. You need to have 3, because they're not just one. There's no one that's going to be the magic pill. Like I said before, if that one doesn't work, then you can sort of back off and then use another one. So that's why you want to, study objection handling and either internalize, an easy way to do it is just to internalize some good scripts, make them your own words, make it sound natural, and learn how to regurgitate that. And the other way is to pick up learn some techniques. As a therapist, I guess I learned this I can't remember whether I learned it when I was actually learning to be some kind of a therapist, but it's called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. It's a whole science, and there's some little subtle things like the level shift is one of my favorites, which is really the Jedi mind trick that we talk about on the objection handling class. Nonetheless, let's just cut to the chase. You need to be confident with your objection handling skills if you want to be a strong lister. Okay.
To be devil's advocate, Dean, what if someone's just persistent on that whole conversation back and forth, and it's insistent and no, and this is what I want? How do you nicely say, pound sand, we're not going to work together?
A hard thing to do, especially when you're new, right? Because you are sort of desperate, and you know, I learned a really good lesson when I was right fresh in the business. Like, we had a neighborhood called Hanover Heights, and like there was only like 12 agents at Hometown Realty, and so Mike was on vacation, and anybody else who had a clue about how to sell a house was on vacation. I was brand new, and so I sat out there, and like I was the site agent. So here I am. I got, you know, I don't know anything. Right. I hadn't sold a house. Maybe I sold one house to some dude. Anyway, I don't know anything about new construction, whatever. And these people come in, they're like, we want to buy the Williamsburg model on lot 6. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's great. Perfect. And set up a meeting with the builder and whatever else. And so we have a meeting with this builder. His name is Joe Lawson. Great guy. Actually, he built the house that I'm in. I love him so much. He's awesome. And so we come in, or the people are there. Joe comes in, sets all the stuff up, and the guy starts talking to Joe, and the guy is the biggest jerk off I've ever been around in my life. And I could tell that Joe was just not digging it. And this guy is on and on. Joe's great grandfather was like a bricklayer in Egypt or something. And everybody in his family's been a bricklayer. And this guy's saying, well, you know, masonry is BS. I mean, that's one of the worst building materials ever. I mean, anyway, Joe's like not digging it. And I'm like, trying to keep everything good. And I noticed that Joe's like, he's got one of those old school, leather briefcases. And like right in the middle of the conversation, this guy's just giving it to Joe. And Joe's like putting all his crap in the briefcase. And Joe like gets up and starts hitting the door. I'm like, Joe, what's the deal? He goes, let me tell you something, Dean. He goes, as a real estate agent, you might have to deal with an asshole like this for, I don't know, 3-4 months. He goes, I build this fellow a house. He didn't say that, but he said, I build this whatever a house. He goes, I'm married to this guy for the rest of time. He goes, I ain't got time for that bullshit. And he left. Now, that's maybe a little less tactful than I would recommend. The moral of that story is, you got to be careful. If you know somebody is an absolute jerk, especially if they're dishonest and deceitful, you really are better off in most cases to pull the plug. That is an experience thing, and something that I don't like to do. I'm in a fortunate situation where I still do it. And many times people, they're like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They can change from the listing presentation throughout the transaction. They're like bipolar, counselor. So they, but you only do what you can do.
But if you're
in most cases, people are great, but you're going to run into some people that will rub you a little bit wrong, and that's okay. That's just everybody's different, and it's a stressful situation. So under stress, people act a little bit differently. Yet if you just absolutely want to vomit hearing everything that the person says, then maybe you need to consider just saying, I just don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work out.
But I mean, does that go against, I guess as a new agent, the biggest fear would be that it's going to follow your name. And then you have that tarnish on your name going out.
What's the worst thing that can follow your name?
What's the worst thing? The bad reputation?
Well, that's not the worst. What's the terrible thing? Listings that don't sell. Okay, so that same person who is the know-it-all wants you to price it. Usually they want to price it too high. They want to set it up for failure. And your sign, the Jake Croco sign, sitting on the ground, and the grass is 4 feet tall around it, and it's rusty because it's been there for 6 years. That's the worst kind of advertising you can get. If you respectfully turn somebody down, you're not going to be the only one that thinks they're a jerk. If they're really a jerk, everybody that they know thinks they're a jerk. And so people might respect you. They might say, well, hey, Jake didn't list Craig's house. Man, we should call him because at least he stands up for himself, because we all know Craig's a jerk, and we're not going to, Craig's really not a jerk. You sort of get what I'm saying? I don't think you need to worry about it. But again, it's not like they said one thing that upsets you. I mean, you got to be tough. I mean, you got to be able to deal with stuff. But especially people that are just dishonest, or what I find the hardest to deal with is if they allude to me being dishonest, then I that's just not me. And if they're going to question my values up front, then I don't have time for that. So anyway, we probably have a whole class on that. All right, so that was practice objection handlers. The moral of that story is tune into the YouTube channel and check out that class. And then when we have one in live, try to get there. Last thing is practice your closes. Agents, a lot of us, we don't want, especially the kind of agents that we attract at Hometown, we're nice people. We don't want to be pushy. And I get that. I don't want to be pushy either. However, I don't want to lose business because I forgot to ask or didn't feel comfortable asking for the business. Remember, a close is a natural conclusion to a business discussion. If you're on a listing presentation with somebody who you think is legitimately going to sell their house, then asking if they're okay with you handling it is normal, right? And yet it is a little uncomfortable. So there's ways to close. Back in the day when we would walk in with the contract and, people would say, press hard, 3 copies. That was a close. That's not really part of it now. My favorite close is, once we built a lot of agreement, I'll ask some of those agreement questions. Like I think Letitia might've been saying, or I'm not sure who it was, but so the yes questions, like, so are we comfortable on the price? And I like to smile and nod. Everybody do this. Everybody do this. It's hard to disagree with that. I mean, I'm not trying to trick them. I'm just, if we've agreed on the price and we're comfortable on price. Yeah, we like that. And, do you feel good about the marketing? I mean, is the marketing proven track record, does that make you feel good? Yes. Then I like to just put it right out there. Do you feel I can sell your home? And then zip it. When you ask questions, a lot of time you have to remember to zip it. Do you feel I can sell your home? And they say, sure. Well, then let's do the right thing. Let's get the home on the market. Let's get the house ready. Let's get it on the market so we can get you set up by whenever you need to be there. Refer to their motivations. If they need to be in Florida by January 30th, then refer to that. If they're getting a divorce and the deal needs to be done, then refer to that. If whatever the motivation is, refer to the motivation and, realize that you're the one that's going to get them there. So practice your closes, and whatever feels good for you, then go with that. Does that make sense? One of the worst closes, and it sort of falls in line with objections. One of the last step of the objection handling process is many people, when they hear an objection, they handle the objection and they say, any other questions, which basically means give me some more objections. If you take control and close, then that can close the door on the further objections. So like when you're doing your presentation, if you say, any other questions? Which I'm not saying you'd never say that. Repeatedly saying that is just inviting people like, well, gee, I must need to have some more questions. And in their minds, questions are usually objections. So, you might want to say that one time, but then once you've answered the question, then you say, well, basically get around to let's do the right thing. Or, if we want to get you to Florida, we can do it. Let's go ahead and sign the contract and get moving, or however you want to close. Do you understand, everybody? That makes sense. So there is, I guess that's 10. I don't know. Maybe it was only 9, maybe it was 11, whatever it was. There's a bunch of great points about listing presentations. The bottom line to become a great lister is you got to be able to answer these 3 questions. You might want to write these down. Okay, everybody really wants to know this. What will my home sell for and why? Okay, what will my home sell for and why? All right. Number two, how long will it take? How long will it take? And number three, can you do it? Or probably a better way to phrase that is, why should I pick you? Okay, write that one down. Not can you do it, but maybe run them both. Why should I pick you? You've got to be able to answer that. What is special about Ariel? What's special about Jake? What's special about Laura, Letitia, Deane, Nikki, Caitlin? What's special about Big Z? Why do I hire you versus the 5,000 other slaps that have a real estate license? You know, if you can't answer that, then why would anybody want to pick you? Okay, I'm not going to close you. I'm going to ask you if you have any questions. So fire away. I must have done a great job of covering the material because no one has a question.
Deane.
Okay, so because you were here today, yo, Z.
This is not the getting the listing. This is when it's under contract and you are the listing agent.
Okay.
Okay. Now, say an example, you are under contract with the person. Obviously, the contract falls apart, but you know that the seller cannot do the repairs, and it gets to the point. Excuse me. Let me rewind. You're trying to reason with a seller, but they're becoming unrealistic with some sort, right? Example would be septic. You have to get an alternative septic, but the seller's unwilling to do that. Does they get to the point where the contract falls apart? You're like, it's not worth it. I got to go get a new seller and just release the contract from this person.
Can be. Yeah. I mean, you can't, you're not, the listing agreement doesn't marry you to the person, I mean, or the job. You don't just, if the going gets tough, you just don't quit. If they're trying to put you in Mission Impossible, I mean, you can't. How many buyers? You'd have to have cash to buy a house that has a failed septic situation, and you'd have to be pretty stupid to do that in many cases. So if your person is unwilling to concede, and you have a licensed septic person has evaluated and said it absolutely needs to be converted to an alternative system to be approved by the state, then, and they're not gonna, and they just tell you, I'm not gonna do that, then how in the hell can you sell the house?
Correct. Okay, perfect.
Right. And you're in the business of selling houses, so, I don't know, maybe there's agents out there that specialize in homes that don't ever sell.
Correct.
I just don't want to be one of them.
That's correct. All right. Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome.
Deane, I have a question.
Yes.
So I have an appointment possibly today or tomorrow with a gentleman that's looking to buy some land. He's looking for 3 to 10 acres. When you talk about comparables and trying to, I guess, prepare for your listing presentation, is a lot different from a home because you can look at one lot versus another. And I guess when you're doing your research as far as the comparables, it's not always going to be apples to apples, if that makes sense. So I guess what would you look for, to kind of sell that?
Good question. Well, there are some similarities, but it is different. And there's homes that you can go on appointments and there's no good comparables for them either. So location, the principle of, the 3 most important principles of real estate are location, location, location. You've heard that.
Mm-hmm.
So geographic proximity is very important when it comes to land.
Right.
Topography and features are very important when it comes to land. So if you've got a lot that is wide open versus one that is wooded, well, that's different. If you can, similar acreage, that's pretty obvious. But I mean, if you've got a 25-acre lot versus a 1-acre lot, there's a big difference. So the closer you can get in acreage, and yet there really isn't that much when you're talking about a lot that's what size is your guy looking for, Letitia?
3 to 10 acres, and he's identified somewhere out in Spotsylvania. He's looking to go either today or tomorrow, depending on his work or whatever. And his range is 50,000, but it's so wide, when you say 3 to 10 acres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then value wise, I mean, there's the per acre price can range tremendously, and between just where it's located. is it perked conventionally? Are they providing the septic information up front? Is there a driveway that is already there? Is it ready to go? Or are you just gambling that you can get all that stuff straight and you're going to have to spend some money? The lots are more valuable when they're turnkey.
Right, right.
So if you have the septic information, you have a good survey, you have all that stuff, then that's a little bit better situation. So I would just say, try to find stuff as close as you can find it. And then after you see the lots, then you can look at the other ones and say, well, this doesn't look anything like it. So that's probably not a good comparable, or this one looks pretty close to it.
Right, right. Okay. Well, I'm going to pull some stuff today because
Good question.
he's looking at a lot of different areas and a lot of different counties. So it's kind of hard again to make the comparison.
Yeah. 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 I think the best advice for a buyer in that situation is just go out and show them, and don't worry about CMA or whatever, just whatever they like. If they'll know it when they see it. And then once you're with them for a while, you'll know it when you see it.
Okay.
But if they find something, then I would focus on that one, and I would do my research there. And, another thing you can do is talk to maybe some more experienced realtors in that area that deal in land sales. You could call them and just say, hey, I'm this is running my thing. I just wonder if you had a minute to give me an idea.
Yeah, and I can do that.
It's easier.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Deane.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, well,
Deane,
thanks again for your time.
I did have a quick question if you wanted me to ask now, or I can email you.
You can ask right now.
Okay, great. It was really quickly. I just wanted to know your thoughts on back to the listings. How do you feel about doing like a pre-listing meeting with the seller to just really get in the house and take a tour with them, as opposed to doing it all together at that same time at that listing appointment?
So more like a two-step process. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. That is an effective strategy for some people. The problem with that is the busier you get, the harder it is to find time to do that. Yet it can be, if it works for, my thing is, if it works for you, if it really is working for you, then good for you. That does enable you to, the first meeting, in my opinion, which, a lot of people don't want to hear my opinion, but in my opinion, the first meeting then is more about fact finding and bonding. Especially if you've got some personality types that are non-analytical. If they're analytical, less bonding, and go over and take copious notes, measure stuff. You really want to try that first meeting is to if you've been, I think you've been to the personality profiling class, Deane, I'm pretty sure of that, but you want to
yes.
You want to move into their quadrant. So if they're analytical, you want to leave that first meeting and they're thinking, boy, did you see all the notes she took? And did you see how she wrote everything down neatly and asked a lot of questions and brought us some information, versus if they're amiable, you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee and talk about the family pictures and all that kind of stuff. So again, you're trying to bond with them based on personality type, and then you're trying to find out facts, uncover some info, some objections possibly, and information that would help you with them. You want to talk about things that maybe need to be done to get the house ready for selling. If there's repairs, you want to offer your assistance to line up contractors, painters, whatever it might be, to help with those sort of things. And then number two, and then you also may want to go through a little bit of overall market conditions so that they sense that you're a market expert. And then step two is to really hone in on the CMA and the pricing and try to get the listing.
Okay, thank you.
So some people, depending on their personality type, that method is going to work better for people that are not drivers, because driver doesn't have time for that. Driver wants bip, 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 bip. Here's the job. Here's what we need to do. Here's what I'm going to do. Bang. Here's how I'm going to do it. And I'm out of here. 30 minutes again.
Okay.
So they don't, like the second meeting, they're like, that's, they don't want that.
I have a
Where the
question.
amiable, they want you to come back and spend the night and lay down and look at pictures and have a grilled cheese sandwich and a bowl of soup and, whatever it is. Who had a question? Laura?
Yeah, you mentioned a personality class or training. Is that something that's on the university, or is that something that's done in?
You can, I'm not sure if all of them are there. We recorded a bunch of them, but I don't know if they're all on there. Anybody else want to comment to that? Have you seen?
I just hadn't seen it yet, so that's why I was asked out.
Yeah.
Some more.
I think 3 out of the 4 different personality types you mentioned are on the Hometown University.
Thank you.
All right, so Craig's homework is going to be to tell me which one is not, and then I'll record the one that's not. So basically, here's the deal. All right, this is going to be the Jiffy personality profile. See this? It's like quadrants. Quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the Cliff's Notes of this deal. So basically, there's 4 different personality types. You need to figure out which one you are, because you're going to be attractive to certain other types, and you're going to be very repelling to certain other types. So like, well, let me get a better thing here. Draw a better quadrant. You can see that better. Okay. So this is driver. All right, here we go. You guys are getting a lot of stuff today. Make sure that when you send in your trainer tip, that you include extra, at least 20% for this. So, all right, so you got right here, top right quadrant, driver. Basically, driver is the person that's, they're not a BSer. These are people that are really into, like, they're to the point. They don't like a lot of BS. They want to know what your recommendations are, sort of like bullet points, and get to the point, and then get on the job. They're not really all that excited about who you are and where you came from. And I mean, they want to know your credentials, but they don't care what your favorite color is and if you like puppies and that kind of stuff. All right. This is expressive. Expressive people are the people that wear like the lampshade on their head at the party. They love to tell stories. They love to tell you all about everything. Their very energy is really important to them, and excitement. They're like the ones that the shiny object. They chase the shiny object. All right. This is analytical. So analytical, numbers and data. That's everything to them. Emotion doesn't play into anything. Amiable, relationships. Especially, they worry about how you feel and how comfortable they are with you and all that. So you can see everybody is a little bit different. None of these are better than the others, except for the one that I am, which is expressive. It's obviously the number one in the world. But these others are okay. The problem, here's what I found out early in my career before I even learned all this stuff. I found out that I never got a listing agreement signed with people that were analytical. Why?
Because
they're
you
the
weren't
complete
talking to
opposite.
them the right way.
Yeah, they just hated me for everything that I was about, right? I mean, I'm talking about the dream and getting fired up, and that's just, they hate that, right? So in order to appeal to them, I need to drop a little bit about who I am and be more like them. It's called versatility.
Right.
Okay, so I need to walk in with a notepad and take notes, which I hate doing. I need to, have data, like bring a box of comps, where I can sort of get the feeling for what it's going to be. I got a good gut feeling for the value. That to them, that's suicide. I mean, they can't deal with that. Okay, and then so like diagonally across is usually your weakness. And like for them, if that guy comes to my house and brings a bunch of data, I don't want that. I want to hear some stories. I want to hear something about, like what happened last time and how cool it was and what we're going to do when we sell it. We're going to go drink some beer when we sell it. And, go skydiving or something, so the driver doesn't want to hear about your dog and where your parents are from and all that kind of crap. Just tell me how you can do it. So the driver's thing is, don't tell me about the storm, just bring the ships in. Okay. Amiable is, oh, I want to learn all about you. How do you feel? And yada, yada, yada. So you get all that. So that when you're pre-qualifying, it's important to sort of try to figure out who you're talking to, so you don't just immediately commit listing suicide before you even,
Before you get a chance to get there. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So
I don't know if it would be helpful for anybody, and Deane, I apologize if I missed this and you said it, but the disc personalities, is that what it was?
no, it's not, but the disc personality is a little bit more detailed.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be what I just did. And there,
Right.
if you really dive, I mean, you can get a doctorate degree in personality profiling.
Right.
That was designed to be like the super express,
Okay.
deal. The more you dive into it, the more complicated it is. And if that's your thing, then good for you. The
Right.
bottom line is just understand that not everyone is like you. And most people, when they sense resistance from someone else in like a listing situation, instead of becoming more versatile, they double down on who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So the natural thing, like for Ariel, let's just say Ariel is amiable. When she feels like somebody's resisting, and this may not be the case, but most people, she's going to become even more amiable, which makes the driver even be like, oh, I can't stand it.
Right.
And
Well,
what, like, for instance, like what is your personality type, Ariel, either in the disc personality or what I just said?
I'm influenced.
Okay. And give me the characteristics of that.
So, and that's kind of what I was going to tell you guys also. I have a bunch of notes on disc personalities. If anybody wants them, I can send you a picture of my notes just so you have it. Feel free to just send me an email because I won't remember everybody, but send me an email and let me know and I'm happy to send them. But I was going to say, like, for me, influence, it breaks it down into behaviors, keywords about these people, and communication techniques. So for me, I'm enthusiastic, optimistic, likes to collaborate. I don't like being ignored. And those are all very accurate. And for this personality type particularly, some of the keywords are charming, collaborative, trusting, energizing, enthusiastic, and communication techniques would be sharing experiences, allowing time to talk, focusing on positive, avoid overloading with details. And then I would say, like, the stark opposite from me is probably, I would say I'm trying to, so like conscientiousness is another one, and they're very, they want like the quality and the accuracy of the numbers, kind of like Deane was talking about. You have to know how to approach that from the different side. Cause like me as an I'm not going to approach someone who's a C as a happy-go-lucky, like, let me tell you all about it. It's exactly what Deane was saying. You want to be able to cater to the way that they take and receive information.
Yeah. And in my chart, we call you expressive.
Mm-hmm.
And expressives, again, are the perfect personality. The rest of you need work. No, one of the things that's interesting about expressive is so true. This really got me like I'm so good at 85%, getting whatever 85% of the way finished. Like I love like a new idea and getting it going and whatever. And then, once I sort of see the finish line, I'm sort of bored with it and move on.
Wait
So,
a minute. Are you an Aries? Because that's what an Aries does.
Yeah, I'm not so much into that, but like another thing with like desk, like when you have your desk, see, I cleaned it up this morning, but that
would drive me insane. There's too much going on over there.
Yeah, well, so maybe you're not the perfect expressive, but you're working on it. You'll get used to that.
I'll achieve that level.
Like, but I will tell you this: sometimes analytical people look like they're super disorganized, but really they're not. That's the thing. Like if you go into somebody's office and it looks chaotic, if you ask them where something is and they're like, hell, I don't have any idea, versus like the analytical will be able to go to like a stack of 26 files that are all over the place and pull it right out.
It's organized chaos.
Right, where mine's just chaos. So, and because I can't, expressives can't focus on one thing because the next shiny thing comes down and I got to deal with that. So, but drivers don't do, driver is like one thing on the desk and they want to get rid of it as fast as possible. Like look at it, boom, boom, boom. Let me hear as much information as I need to make a decision and bang, let's go. So anyway, it's fascinating stuff.
Thank you.
How we got on that topic, but it's easy to get me distracted. So, all right. For those amiables out there, I love you. For those analyticals out there, boy, this really adds up to me. I've taken copious notes during this presentation, and I'm going to review them and write a synopsis. And then for you drivers, boom, we got it done. Go find something else to do. And expressive, look, squirrel, we're out of here.